My name is John Downey and I'm a Professor of Comparative Media Analysis at Loughborough University, where I'm also the Director of our research centre, the Centre for Research in Communication and Culture. And my research interests are in political communication and specifically the way that populists use the media to gain support from their electorates. I think that populism, rather than a fully fledged ideology, is more of a communicative style, a rhetoric. And it's a rhetoric that can be adopted strategically by left-wing actors, left-wing politicians, right-wing politicians, and can be adopted by politicians in different countries. You could argue that it's a transnational phenomenon. I think one of the interesting things about populism is that it can actually occur in very similar forms across countries. What are the characteristics of populism? Well, one of the characteristics is an appeal to the people. The people are seen as being good. The people are seen as being misled by the elites, by political elites, by economic elites, who are often perceived to be corrupt or self-interested. And in certain versions of populism, particularly in right-wing versions of populism, there's also a xenophobia, a construction of outgroups, attacks on migrants or foreigners or perhaps followers of Islam. That is a good question. Well, there are a number of factors. There are some big factors. I think there are a large number of people who feel that they have been forgotten, people who have been left behind economically. There is growing inequality in many societies, and people look around and feel as though they've been left behind, they've been forgotten, they've been exploited. There's also a cultural backlash. People feel as though things have moved on culturally, and I think it's partly a reaction to the growth of liberal ideas, and so a lot of populists are anti-gay. They may be, so that there are lots of sort of authoritarian cultural attitudes mixed in with a sense of economic resentment as well. So there are some sort of big macro factors which explain why people are discontented or disaffected or resentful. And then you have politicians and movements and parties who have proved themselves to be skillful in exploiting that or manipulating that, who know how to organise and adopt a political rhetoric that will find resonance with those disaffected people. I think populists encourage people to believe that institutions don't work, but there's a saying in English, no smoke without fire. Perhaps there have been many occasions where elites have not delivered for their populations. The financial crisis is just one case in point where the people who probably caused the financial crisis, the bankers, didn't suffer from the crisis. It was the rest of the population that suffered. And the political elites were the people who made that so that there's quite a lot of distrust in elites may well be justified, and I think that's why populism is going to be quite a long-lasting phenomenon. This idea that it's just going to go away, I think is unlikely, and it relies, for populism to go away, I think we have to address economic inequality, political inequality, clean up political systems. And it's only then really that we can defeat populism. That's a good question. Populists tend to feed off publicity. So a lot of mainstream media is actually very critical of populist politicians, movements and parties. But that doesn't seem to affect their levels of support. In fact, it seems that any coverage can be good coverage in the mainstream press because it makes people aware that at least there is this alternative to the mainstream. It's not clear what you should do if you're a mainstream journalist and are critical of populism. Should you cover it or should you remain silent? That's not an easy question to answer, and I think lots of journalists don't know what to do. In terms of regulation and regulation of social media, this is starting to become a really hot topic. A number of individuals have been demonetized on YouTube. There's people's Facebook accounts have been taken away, Twitter accounts and things like that. That appears to be, at least in the UK, appears to be quite successful, certainly in shutting down some more extreme versions of populism. Whether it's always justified, I don't know, because they often claim that freedom, that they would make the case themselves that their freedom, their human rights are being impinged upon and that they're being denied free speech. So I think you need to sort of tread a very careful line in terms of censorship and regulation. What can public service media do? Well, it's often said that we're living in some sort of post-truth age where populist politicians are very skillful at manipulating emotions, and it's a politics of effect. Public service journalists, public service media perhaps can focus on the truth and focus on accuracy and impartiality, and focus on the facts, and to show where arguments aren't true. So, for a case, the UK, for example, one of the slogans from the Brexit referendum was that Britain sent £350 million a week to the European Union. Completely untrue, but people still believed it, even though it was untrue. Why did they believe it? Well, perhaps because journalists didn't insistently enough deconstruct that claim. That they need to focus in a post-truth world. We need to focus still on the truth.